Hey guys, so today I want to talk to you about racial trauma. So July is Minority and BIPOC Mental Health Awareness Month, and I want to kind of end the month with talking about racial trauma. There's so much happening in our Black community that we need to address racial trauma. And racial trauma, or what they call race-based traumatic stress. And it looks very similar to PTSD. And what that is mental and emotional injury that is caused with by racial bias, ethnic discrimination, racism. You might experience it in the workplace, workplace discrimination, repeated occurrences of police brutality, negative images and stereotypes portrayed in the media. These are all sources of racial trauma. And when we think of trauma, there's the extreme, and then there's those subtle things that we don't always pick up on. The extreme is watching these videos of our people in the community, of the police brutality that's happening. That's extreme trauma. And watching it is traumatic, and it leaves its mark on us. And the subtle things of the little experiences that we have in our day-to-day interactions that begin to pile up. Those things, right? That's all traumatic for us. And so trauma can come out in very different ways. Trauma can cause anxiety, depression. It can cause physical symptoms. So headaches, fatigue. If you've ever been in a situation and you're like, I'm not sure why I just feel so anxious, or I feel so heavy in a situation, it could be because there's some underlying trauma there that you haven't dealt with. And it's important to acknowledge the trauma, acknowledge that it's real. And then what do? We have to talk to each other more. We have to support each other more when it comes to it. Talking about our experiences, our feelings, our thoughts, what's happening, and then what do we do about it? So how do we work through the trauma? We can't skip over it. We can't ignore it. We have to work through it. And that's finding your ways of coping. And so that one of the biggest things I'm always an advocate for is like taking mental breaks. Taking that time to disconnect from everything, have those mindless moments where you're not obligated to anything or anyone, and you're just being free to do whatever it is that you need to do to recover, whatever brings you joy and peace in those moments. That's what you do. Some other things you can do is, practice mindfulness, meditate. You can talk it out with someone, exercising, finding these activities, again, that just take little energy. But again, these things that fill your cup up. It's exhausting dealing with trauma. Trauma can come out in your dreams. When you're sleeping or when you're trying to go to sleep, you may have difficulty. Something that keeps popping up in your mind. It keeps blocking you from resting. That's signs of trauma. Signs that something's there that you haven't dealt with. We have to address that. And so for our Black community, one of the things that we have to do better with, guys, is our mental health. And taking the time to address it, to support it, and acknowledge that our mental well-being is important. Our mental well-being needs to be just as important as our physical health and our physical well-being. And as we are dealing with everything that's happening in our community, we are all experiencing racial trauma in some form, some way or another. And again, it may not be as extreme for some people as for others, but it's there and it's present, and we have to do something about it. And so we have to welcome the idea that we can do something about it, and we have to talk to each other, and we have to figure out how to get help for each other, how to make it safe to talk about it. So we got to work on the stigma and the judgment that we give each other, be kind to each other about it, but offer up that space that if we don't value and take care of our mental health, nobody else will. So we have to do better at doing that, at acknowledging that, and then we can work through the trauma. Trauma is something, again, that is very present and real. Racial trauma is present and it's real, and it's something that is very important to address, because as we are in this movement, in this fight, in what's happening right now, trying to fight for change and advocate for change, how do we stay in this race? How do we stay in it with trauma? And that's, we have to acknowledge it, and we have to find our ways to cope with it and do something about it. And so I hope that this starts the conversation for many of you It continues the conversation for others. And if you need to take it a step further, reach out to someone, talk to someone about what you're experiencing, share your experiences with each other. Find a professional to connect with, to say, hey, I'm struggling. And there's nothing wrong with it. I'm struggling and I need help. And let's figure out what's happening. Let's make it okay. Let's welcome it. Let's make therapy and counseling and taking care of your mental well-being, let's make that something that's important, but make it something that's okay. We have to, if we don't make it okay with each other and in our community, again, guys, nobody else will. So I encourage each of you, if you are experiencing some things, reach out to someone, talk through it, share it with each other, talk about your experiences, and then figure out how to move through it. I think that moving through it is the key. And that, I think, is a part that sometimes we get stuck on. We want to just kind of let it go away. We want to make it go away. We want to ignore it. But I think that acknowledge it, sit in it, is real. And then what do we do with it? How do we move through it? Talk with each other. Open up the space. Use those go-tos. And if that's not working, then seek help. So as we wrap up July, as it is, again, Minority and BIPOC Mental Health Awareness Month, I encourage you guys to start somewhere. Start today. Start today to acknowledge your mental health needs and to connect with someone and to get help. There are resources out there. Thank you.